Coming up on this Wednesday edition of Daybreak, expressing her annoyance with the gridlock in the National Assembly, President Park Geun-hye calls on the opposition to pass a bill on April's ferry sinking that has paralyzed Parliament for months. Korea's national security chief says the country is prepared to join the fight against Islamic State extremists by providing humanitarian assistance, but he does not rule out a possible military contribution in the future. First, US President Barack Obama says 3,000 US military personnel will set up facilities to tackle the Ebola outbreak in West Africa. Daybreak begins now.
Hello and thanks for joining us. To our viewers around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Wednesday, it's September 17th here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome and you're tuned in to Daybreak. And we start this morning with the growing frustration with the alarming lack of activity at the nation's National Assembly. President Park Geun-hye let her annoyance boil over on Tuesday, but stressed it was not her place to get involved in untangling the situation sparked by a contentious bill on April's ferry sinking. Our Chae-Yusan starts us off.
President Park Geun-hye was very clear in her first response to calls from the opposition party that she step in to resolve the current legislative deadlock over a probe into April's ferry sinking.
지금 진상조사위원회에 수사권과 기소권을 주자는 주장에 대해 일부에서는 대통령이 결단을 하라고 합니다. 하지만 그것은 삼권 분립과 사법 체계의 근간을 흔드는 일로 대통령으로서 할 수 없고.
Political discord over the issue has suspended parliamentary affairs for months, with the victims' families demanding that the committee stated in the bill have more power in the investigation. The president instead said the second bipartisan deal on the bill, which the opposition backtracked from last month, should be accepted. She also urged the National Assembly to quickly get past the ferry bill standoff and focus on improving people's livelihoods and national safety management. President Park relayed her position to the ruling party leadership at her office later in the day. With neither the ruling nor the opposition side willing to budge more than 2 weeks into the Assembly's regular session, Speaker Chung Hee-hwa took matters into his own hands.
The speakers decided on the Assembly's regular session schedule as the ongoing parliamentary paralysis with a lineup of pending bills has run counter to the people's wishes.
The standing committees, with or without the opposition, are expected to resume on Wednesday, with the ruling party aiming to pass other economic and reform-related bills at a plenary session on September 26th. Chae-Yusan, Arirang News.
Now, Korea's National Security Advisor Kim Kwon-jin returns to the Korean capital Seoul on this Wednesday, following 4 days of talks with US officials on the timing of the transfer of wartime operational control from Washington to Seoul and other issues. No word yet on a specific date for the transfer, but we'll likely find out next month. Kwon So-ah reports.
The timing and conditions for the transfer of wartime operational control from Washington to Seoul are still under discussion, despite expectations of an extension from next year's deadline to around 2020. High-level defense talks between National Security Advisor Kim Kwon-jin and his U.S. counterpart Susan Rice are ongoing in Washington. But South Korea's defense ministry said Tuesday that both sides have agreed not to specify a set date for the transfer yet. The ministry added the two allies are aiming to announce an agreement at an annual security meeting next month.
Korea and the U.S. are still in discussions. That's why we would thank you for understanding that currently we cannot give you any details.
The timing of the OPCON transfer is said to depend largely on how far South Korea goes in building its defense power against nuclear threats by the North. And the year 2020 is widely expected to be the right timing for the transfer given the schedule of Seoul's blueprint for its defense system. Washington has been in control over Korean forces when it comes to wartime operations since the end of the Korean War. And the two countries have not been able to conduct the transfer since 2007, when the idea of the transfer was first announced. Seoul requested to put off the 2012 transfer till 2015 due to North Korea's third nuclear test in February last year. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
And staying with Kim Gwon-jin's trip to the US, and President Park's top security aide says that Korea will support US-led efforts to fight Islamic State militants. But this will take the form of mostly humanitarian aid, although reports say he didn't rule out some possible military assistance further down the line. Kim made the remarks on Tuesday after talks with US Deputy Secretary of State William Burns in Washington. Now, the exact size and details of the aid has yet to be confirmed. Kim also said Korea is looking to send around 3,000 military medical personnel to countries in West Africa affected by the latest Ebola outbreak. He added that he will work on the details once he arrives back in Seoul. North Korea has sent a strongly worded letter to South Korea's presidential office demanding it stop South Koreans flying anti-Pyongyang propaganda leaflets across the border. A South Korean government official says North Korea's National Defense Commission sent 2 letters to the National Security Council, one on Monday and one last Saturday. The basic gist of the letters was that South Korea should stop its nationals sending the leaflets before proposing high-level inter-Korean talks. Now, Seoul's stance on this is that it has no legal right to restrict people's freedom of assembly or to stop them flying those balloons. Now, historically, the Korean Silk Road was a major cultural trade route that linked Korea with the West, and this was during the Shilla dynasty. Now, Jim Young-gil reports on how some 150 local university students and academics have started their own journey along this very famous road to follow the path taken by their ancestors.
The Korean Silk Road was at the center of cultural interaction linking traders, merchants, pilgrims, and monks from Korea to the Mediterranean Sea during the Shilla Kingdom, when the capital was located in Gyeongsangbuk-do Province.
Last year, Gyeongsangbuk-do Province initiated the Korean Silk Road project as part of an effort to revive the historical route to boost trade and to expand cultural exchanges like the Korean Wave.
A ceremony was held Tuesday in the southeastern port city of Pohang, signaling the start of the 45-day Korean Silk Road trip. The students' journey using the sea route will take them to a total of 9 countries, including China, Malaysia, India, before their final destination of Iran. Along the way, students will visit historical sites and hold cultural exchanges. At their first destination in Guangzhou, China, students will attend a symposium on promoting cultural ties between Korea and China. Students will donate the model of a Shilla crown to a Chinese museum as a symbol of their friendly ties.
In India, we will explore the footpaths of Korean Buddhist monk Hyecho, the first Korean monk who traveled to India. We will install a monument to commemorate him in the Sarnath grasslands.
The trip will help students better understand how the Shilla Kingdom was able to flourish culturally and economically using the Korean Silk Road to blend foreign influences with Korean traditions and ideas. It's also intended to revive such a spirit in this generation, so they can better utilize the Silk Road routes to help boost Korea's competitiveness on the global stage. Jim Young-gil, Arirang News, Pohang.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
Korea's Finance Minister Park Geun-hye has marked his first 2 months in office. Now, local markets have been given a boost by his expansionary policy drives, but a lot of questions remain over how effective his short-term measures will be in dealing with the bigger, much more complex structural issues affecting the Korean economy. Our Kim Ji-yeon has the details.
It's been 2 months since the appointment of Park Geun-hye as finance minister, and his expansionary policies to spur growth are starting to produce results in some areas. For one, the country's benchmark KOSPI reached an almost 3-year high at the end of July. The stagnant real estate market is also showing signs of improvement, and the number of housing transactions jumped more than 5% in July from the previous month. However, some argue the economy has some way to go before it's back on path to a firm recovery. July's coincidence and leading composite index, which indicates the health of the economy, was just over 100 and 101 respectively, unchanged from the previous month. A reading over 100 means that there are more optimists than pessimists on the economy. A reading under 100 indicates the opposite. The nation's job market hasn't really picked up either. In August, 594,000 jobs were created from a month earlier, but the majority of these jobs were part-time positions, and they're mostly filled by people in their 50s. On top of this, the real GDP growth rate grew a mere 0.5% on quarter, the lowest in 21 months. As a result, economic institutes, including the state-run Korea Development Institute, are reportedly considering lowering their growth projections for this year. 10 international banks have already cut their growth forecast for the Korean economy by 0.1 percentage point on average to 3.7%. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, there's mounting criticism here in Korea that the government is bombarding low-income people with cigarette and local tax hikes. And a recent report shows Korea may be pretty soft on higher income earners compared to other nations. According to a report by the OECD, Korea's income tax to GDP ratio stood at just 4% in 2012. That's the third lowest among 28 OECD member states that were surveyed. Countries with the highest income tax ratios were in Europe, Denmark and Iceland to be exact, where the figures stood at 24% and 14% respectively. Korea's corporate tax to GDP ratio, however, was the fourth highest among OECD member states at 4%. Now, Korea can seem like a very exciting country to outsiders, but a new study shows that the vast majority of people living here are not overly happy. According to the latest global WellBeing Index, fewer than 1 out of 5 Koreans think they are thriving in most aspects of their life. A study jointly conducted by Gallup of some 130,000 people in 135 countries asked about respondents' well-being in 5 aspects: health, social, financial, community well-being and sense of purpose. Korea came in at 75th overall, with only 14% saying they were thriving in more than 3 categories. This is lower than other Asian countries like Taiwan, which came in at 55th, and Japan at 64th, and is also lower than the Philippines, Thailand and India. Panama topped the list with more than 60% saying they were thriving in more than 3 elements. Now, if you own a smartphone, chances are you've stuck out your arm and snapped a pic of yourself. And taking a photo of yourself and posting it online is so widespread these days that the word selfie was named the word of the year in the latest edition of the Oxford English Dictionary. For more on what selfies say about us and whether they'll stand the test of time, our Shin Se-min reports.
Let me take a selfie.
Immortalizing moments with our faces in them. Self-portrait photographs, better known today as selfies, know no geographical, gender, or age boundaries. The selfie craze has gone viral and global.
Taking selfies are more convenient than having to ask other people. Also, I know which angles and poses best compliment me.
And riding the trend is his latest gadget, the so-called selfie stick, which gives photo takers an extra inch of arm length to make it easier to take the perfect selfie.
Sales of this 4-foot pole this summer in Korea, owing in part to the surge of single vacationers, prove its popularity.
In the past month, we have seen a 20-fold increase in selfie stick sales, and the demand continues to rise.
So is this just an advanced way of taking selfies and indulging yourself in narcissistic moments? Some say it is. But it could be more than that in Korea. Koreans living in one of the world's most wired countries that's small enough to stay hyper-connected may feel the need to show the better sides of their faces and know which filter flatters them the most.
The selfies that are being taken by the majority of Koreans are hardly an act of narcissism. A small study of selfie takers shows that they are partly influenced by their own insecurities about their appearance. So they are taking selfies in a way they think is a good representation of them.
Love them or hate selfies, these sticks are here to prove that there is desire out there to be noticed and recognized. And until the day we find some other means to present ourselves, we've got our smartphone cameras and these sticks. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Well, now it's time for a look through the international headlines we're following on this Wednesday morning. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim, standing by at the news center. Good morning, Eunice.
And good morning to you, Mark. Just about an hour ago, U.S. President Barack Obama addressed reporters on a ramped-up response to the spiraling Ebola crisis in West Africa following a meeting at the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. While stating that Ebola does not directly threaten the United States, President Obama said the world has a responsibility to act as he discussed plans to build and send 3,000 military personnel to West Africa. He said the staff would build new facilities, including isolation centers, as well as provide logistics and engineering support to combat the outbreak in the largest international response in the history of the CDC. This as the United Nations released a warning that containing the West African epidemic could cost nearly $1 billion to keep it from turning into a human catastrophe. It also said the number of Ebola cases could begin to double every 3 weeks. Nearly 5,000 cases have been logged in Liberia, Sierra Leone, Guinea, Nigeria, and Senegal since March, with about half of them being identified in the last 3 weeks. And we are 2 days to the Scottish referendum to declare independence from the United Kingdom, and the spotlight is falling on the undecided voter as the anticipated tiebreaker in this increasingly tight campaign. Meanwhile, leaders of Great Britain, including Prime Minister David Cameron, have pledged to hand Scotland more powers in the way it is governed, published on the front page of the country's Daily Record newspaper. Leaders of the Yes campaign, that is yes to breaking away from the union, dismissed the proposal as an insult to voters and asked why it had taken some 2 years for the offer to surface. Russia's Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu has indicated that more Russian troops may be necessary in the annexed Russian peninsula of Crimea, citing the growing presence of foreign forces and a deterioration of the situation in Ukraine. The statement by the minister was made in a meeting with military commanders, but did not specify what types of forces nor how many would be sent. Some 1,300 soldiers from 15 different countries, including NATO member states, are holding military drills in western Ukraine. NATO has said a buildup of Russian forces would rise tensions and undermine the shaky ceasefire in place between Kiev and separatists in eastern Ukraine. And a deployment of U.S. ground forces in Iraq and Syria is possible should the current anti-Islamic State strategy prove to be ineffective. That's what Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Martin Dempsey, indicated before a Senate hearing on Tuesday. General Dempsey did underline there was no intention right now to use American military advisors in direct ground combat, limiting American fighting contribution to airstrikes.
And a good Wednesday morning to you all as we kick things off with the 2014 Incheon Asian Games, which is now just 2 days away. And on Tuesday, the main squad of the South Korean delegation arrived in Incheon. Now 60 members of the delegation arrived in Incheon, led by the head of the Korea Sailing Federation and chief of delegation Park Geun-hye, and began their stay at the Athletes Village. Park vowed to achieve good results in order to heal the wounds of the people caused by the tragic Seoul ferry accident back in April. Meanwhile, the entire South Korean delegation will have the official flag-raising ceremony on Thursday. And at the same time, the North Korean main delegation also arrived in Incheon as they began their stay at the Athletes Village. Meanwhile, one of the things you'll see during the opening ceremony on Friday is the athlete's oath. And on Tuesday, it was announced that Olympic archer Oh Jin-hyuk and Olympic fencer Nam Hyun-hee will represent the athletes in Incheon. Now, they become just the third Korean duo to recite the athlete's oath since the 1986 Seoul Asian Games and the 1988 Seoul Summer Olympics. The oath will be a pledge of commitment to the spirit of sportsmanship and fair play. Now, Oh Jin-hyuk is a London gold medalist and a 3-time world champion, and Nam Hyun-hee has won 5 gold medals during the past 3 Asian Games. And shifting over to golf, where 19-year-old Kim Hyo-joo returned to Korea on Tuesday after winning the 2014 Arirang Championship. Now, with a huge crowd waiting for the champion at the Incheon International Airport, the teen was still soaking in the fact that she just won her first LPGA Tour major over the weekend. But despite the big win, she remained humble as she vowed to improve her stamina and her short game if she wants to do well in the LPGA Tour. Meanwhile, no rest for Kim Hyo-joo as she's set to compete in the KLPGA Championship taking place later this week. And finishing things off in baseball, the Asian Games team began their training on Tuesday. But if you thought the other players in the KBO are taking a nice 2-week break, well, you're wrong. According to several managers in the KBO teams, they're set to hold mini camps throughout the break to work on different things that the team needs. And teams in Seoul and the metropolitan area like the Tusan Bears, the LG Twins, and the SK Wyverns, including the Nexon Heroes, are set to play exhibition games against the KT Wiz, who are set to join the KBO next season. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. It's shaping up to be a cloudy day. Rain is expected in some parts of Jeju, Gangwon-do, and Gyeongsang-buk-do areas. About 5 to 20 millimeters of precipitation is in store for those regions during the day, while the rest of the nation will also see passing showers. So with the clouds and rain, we'll definitely have fall-like conditions even in the afternoon hours with temperatures in the mid-20s in many areas. But be aware, gray skies and the threat of rain will linger into the evening hours. With that, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. The overnight lows here in Seoul dropped to 19. Then behind the capital, Daegu and Gwangju should all make it to 24, which is about 3 to 6 degrees lower than yesterday. And Busan should climb to 25 later on. Now for other regions, it looks like Jeju Island and Daejeon will top out at 26 and 24 respectively, while Mount Gyeongang gets up to 13. Well, that's all for Korea, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's going to do it from us. Korea Today is coming up at the top of the hour, so stay tuned to Arirang TV. Have a fabulous rest of the day, and thanks for watching. Goodbye.